Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 106. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we have the Kalos team. And we're just going to be upfront about this. This team has received the most revisions out of any team that I've done so far in the 128 teams challenge. Just because I thought Kalos was going to be easy, because I like Kalos. I think it's a nice generation. Sure, it didn't have that many Pokemon, but a lot of the Pokemon in Kalos just did not make it into Generation 9. Because, like, first of all the strong Pokemon that came out in Gen 6 were Mega Evolutions, and we obviously don't have Mega Evolutions. But then there's so many Pokemon that, like, kind of add depth to Kalos, like Aegislash, and Heliolisk, and Aromatisse and Slurpuff. They're not in Generation 9, so there's very, very little for me to work with Kalos here. As a matter of fact, it is so little, we don't even have an Intimidate setter, we don't have a Weather setter, we don't have a Terrain setter except for like a manual Misty Terrain Florges. But I went ahead and I scraped together what we have here, so let's just get into it. So starting off with our pseudo of the region, we've got regular Goodra here, and regular Goodra is going to be taking advantage of its high natural special defense, along with the Assault Vest to make us a super Spadef tanky Pokemon, and we also have some pretty okay moves in the Dragon Pulse for some consistent Dragon Power, and the Muddy Water for some consistent Water type spread damage, and we also have the Acid Spray in order to lower the special defense of the target. Since we have a good number of special attackers on the team, it benefits us to try and stack damage against maybe the opponent's tankier mons for the ones that we cannot just flat out OHKO using the bigger damage pieces. And then we also have the Weather Ball on Goodra because, as I mentioned before, we don't have any weather setters. However, we do have Pokemon that can set the weather, with Talonflame just running Sunny Day and Klefki having a Prankster Sunny Day. And then since Weather is also pretty common in the format, it's very likely that the opponent will run Weather, and then Weather Ball we can use to take advantage of their own weather in some way. But we are also using Sap Sipper on Goodra, so that way we don't have to be worried about the effects of grass type moves, the big ones being like Spore and Sleep Powder. They won't put us to sleep, they will instead give us an attack boost, which we can't really do anything with the attack boost, but it's better than nothing. And then we also have the Terra type of Water on Goodra because of our Sap Sipper. It gives us an immunity to grass, which means that if we go Terra Water, we'll only be weak to electric, and electric is not a very common type in this format. Next up we have Sylveon, and Sylveon is going to be one of our big damage pieces, as we have the Pixelate ability in combination with our Hyper Voice to deal a lot of big spread fairy damage, and then once we've used Hyper Voice at least once, it will activate our Throat Spray in order to increase our special attack. But we also have the special attacking option to go for Shadow Ball with Sylveon, just for some good ghost type damage, and we have Weather Ball, which whenever there's not a weather set up with Sylveon, it will be boosted by the Pixelate because it's technically a normal type move, so become Pixelate boosted. But then once we have a weather activated, or the opponent has activated a weather, Sylveon gets a little bit of type coverage, which is pretty neat. And we are also water on Sylveon, mostly so that we can resist steel type moves. Up next we have Pyroar, and Pyroar is a pretty unique Pokemon that's extremely niche. There's a lot of better fire types and better normal types to run than Pyroar. However, Pyroar is the only Pokemon that can be both a fire and a normal type, which makes it a really interesting pick to run because of its type coverage, as we have both the Hyper Voice, same thing as Sylveon, except ours is going to actually be normal stab, and then we have the Heat Wave for some spread fire type stab, and we can use Terra Blast both as a normal type move and as a grass type move whenever we go for the Grass Terra. But the thing about Pyroar is that none of its abilities really allow it to stand out too well, as we have Unnerve, which prevents from eating berries, which usually isn't too good, and we have Moxie, even though we're a special attacker. So we're going to go with the Rivalry ability, which we have never discussed, mostly because there's no good Pokemon that have Rivalry as an ability. But Rivalry makes it so that you do increased damage on the Pokemon that are the same gender as the Pokemon that you have, and it decreases the damage on the opposite gender. And there is an argument to be made that technically every Pokemon in the format should be optimized in some way based on what gender they have. There are specific things like the fact that starters are more likely to be male than female, and also Pokemon that has specific forms, like Basculin male is the big one, and nobody uses Basculin female all that often. So on your rivalry mons, you want to be a male in order to do more damage to other males, but then that means that if you're running a team that has starters, you should try to get starters that are female specifically to counter rivalry mons, which just makes it a huge unique mess that it doesn't matter. None of it matters. And it's also one of those differences between playing on Pokemon Showdown and playing on Cart, is that if a Pokemon team is made on Cart, like I said before, they're more likely to have male starters because that's more likely to be what you get whenever you breed them. However, Pokemon Showdown just makes it entirely random. Up next, we have Talonflame and what would be a Gen 6 team without Talonflame, probably the best regional bird out of all of them in my opinion. Just because, as we have used Talonflame many times before, we have the Gale Wings ability, which means that we get priority with our flying type moves whenever our health is full, and we have the option to go for the Tailwind in order to increase all of the Pokemon on the team's speed, as well as the Sunny Day in order to set up the sun for Pyro's damage boost, and Sylveon and Goodra's Weather Ball, and also Trevenant, as we'll discuss with Trevenant in a bit here. But then we also have the priority Brave Bird just for getting in some good flying type damage, and we're Cover Cloak so that we're hopefully avoiding fake outs, and we're Terra Grass so that we're hopefully not getting put to sleep by powdery things. But moving right on to Trevenant here, we are going to be a Trick Room Trevenant, just in case there is a Pokemon team that is majority faster than our Mon. Since a lot of these guys are mid-speed, we can go for the Trick Room mode or the Tailwind mode, depending on what we need. And with the Trick Room mode, we have a good amount of staying power with our Citrus Berry and Harvest in combination. Since we are running Sun on this team, if we have Sun up, we will get a 100% chance to restore our berry in the sun with our Harvest, which means that if Trevenant's on like 9% health at the end of a turn, it gets to eat its berry, harvest another berry, eat that berry, and then we can protect, and then we'll have another berry stored up, which is just a lot of berries for 2 turns. But also to give Trevenant a little bit more staying power, we also have the grass type Horn Leech in order to recover some health into probably water types. Since we do have 2 fire types on this team, we need a grass type in order to cover those water types at least a little bit. And then Trevenant also has the knockoff in order to try and get rid of opponent's items, and we are Terraflying on Trevenant mostly just because Trevenant wants to be in the air, I guess. And lastly on the team, we are slotting on Klefki as another support mon, as we have the Prankster ability on Klefki, which allows us to get priority on all of our status moves, and we only have status moves on Klefki, as we have the Sunny Day to disrupt weather or to set up the sun for our mons that previously, as mentioned, enjoy the sun a lot. And we also have Metal Sound in order to reduce the target special defense to make it so that we can do more special damage to them, as well as the Light Screen and the Reflect in order to reduce the damage that we're taking in combination with our Light Clay in order to extend the effects of those moves, and our Terra Dark so that we can avoid a Prankster taunt. But yeah, that's the basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. Alright, so first up we have a Snow team here where they have an opposing Talonflame in order to set up their Tailwinds, and it seems like with Blaziken and Garchomp, most of the pieces are going to be faster than our pieces. So we lead Klefki and Sylveon here as the opponent leads Rotom, Frost, and Samurott. Neither of us trying to lead with our Talonflames here in order to not lose them. We set up the Light Screen with Klefki because we don't fear Samurott as much, and we go for the Hyper Voice there, which Talonflame now decides to switch in from the Volt Switch and gets up the Tailwind. We do unfortunately catch the Aqua Cutter crit, but it also allows us to get Klefki on the field, which it wasn't really doing much now that has both screens up. And we take Samurott there with Sylveon as Rotom goes for the Terra Electric, and Talonflame protects as our Talonflame sets up another Tailwind, and we lose Talonflame due to the discharge, and Sylveon also gets paralyzed and gets full paralyzed, which is kind of unfortunate. Pyroar goes for the Terra Grass here in order to resist the discharge and gets off the Hyper Voice, taking up KO on Talonflame, even though it was the opposite gender of Pyroar. And Rotom is still dishing out the discharge, but it's currently locked into the discharge because choice specs, and Pyroar is just faster than both, so it gets to click the Heat Wave and destroy both targets there. Next up, we have a battle against a full offense rain team with Pelipper, Kalos Region, and also Golden Go can hide from fire types inside the rain, and then Hydreigon can also afford to do a lot of damage, and Amoonguss for putting things to sleep. Sounds like a pretty good team. So we start with Klefki and Trevenant here, as they start with Pelipper and Goldengo. Not the greatest lead for Trevenant. I think I was trying to see if they would lead Archaludon here, but they Hurricane and they Shadow Ball into Trevenant, maybe just stop it from trying to get up a Trick Room, as Klefki gets off the light screen for free. And now we bring in Pyroar and Sunny Day, and the Hurricane does get the 50% chance to hit Pyroar, but since Pyroar is a normal type, it is immune to Goldengo's Shadow Ball. So Pyroar is actually a really good matchup into Goldengo, since it resists both Steel and is immune to ghost type moves. But now we see the opponent swap their Goldengo out to the Archaludon in the back, and Pelipper gets its Spadef decreased and gets brought down to Sash from the Heat Wave in Sun because of the Spadef decreased, and they go for the Sun Weather Ball into Klefki, dealing a lot of damage into Klefki there. We Metal Sound into Archaludon, and the opponent decides to try and save Pelipper in favor of Amoonguss, and Amoonguss does take the Heat Wave, but it takes so much damage from the Heat Wave, but now Pelipper gets to come back in to reset the rain, but because we still have Klefki on the field, we can just immediately reset their rain again back to Sun, and the Amoonguss is able to live the Hyper Voice because of our rivalry ability not doing enough damage to the Amoonguss, which makes this game kind of unnecessarily hairy, as Make It Rain is going to take out Pyroar despite the resist, and Trevenant is immune to the Grass type move on the switch in there, which is at least nice. Brave Bird is able to claim the Amoonguss, and Goldengo seems to be stuck and Make It Raining into our Pokemon, so we really need it to not crit us through the light screen there, as Trevenant gets up the Trick Room after eating its berry, and it gets another berry, but it's on 51%, so it's right outside of eating the citrus berry again. And Trevenant is now on more health than when it started this turn, but thankfully the combination of the super effective knockoff to get rid of the Goldengo's item and the Brave Bird from Talonflame are enough to take out their Goldengo. Lastly, we have a bit of a strange Weezing team here. It has some of the usual Weezing pieces, as it has the Toedscruel, but it also has Arcanine, who's probably Ability Shield, so that you can intimidate even when Weezing is turning off abilities. So we start the game with Klefki and Goodra. The opponent starts the game with Arcanine and Porygon 2, and Arcanine does get off the Intimidate, so Porygon 2 gets the attack boost from its download, but in comes Weezing to turn off abilities, and they immediately just Flare Blitz into Klefki, as Klefki's Prankster was turned off by Weezing hitting the field, so unfortunately could not get the Reflect for itself, and Arcanine also dodges the Muddy Water, which is not great. Arcanine decides to go for the Terra Ghost here, as both Talonflame and Weezing are and Talonflame doesn't take rocks damage, but Goodra does, and Goodra at least gets some more Muddy Water Chip into Arcanine, but Arcanine gets taken out by Brave Bird on the next turn at least, so it doesn't get a chance to test that accuracy drop. Weezing takes Dragon Pulse, but doesn't take too much damage, and Goodra is absolutely taking these special attacks. Brave Bird just to continue trying to chip down the Weezing, and Acid Spray in order to make it easier to deal with the Porygon 2 come out, as Goodra yet again takes the special attacks from Weezing and Porygon 2, and we Brave Bird Weezing to try and finish it, but Weezing protects, and Dragon Pulse is doing more than 50% to Porygon 2, which means that it does not really have a safe way to recover off the damage anymore, and Weezing gets eliminated on this turn, and Porygon 2 also gets taken out by Goodra's Dragon Pulse, but now it is Palma in the back, who we Brave Bird with Talonflame, but Talonflame takes itself out, and Palma actually goes for the Revival Blessing here, bringing back Arcanine, and we have Pyroar in the back, and the opponent has Arcanine, and unfortunately their Arcanine is a female, which means we're going to do decreased damage to it, which means that it lives the Terra Blast from our Terra Grass there, and the Rock Slide is going to take out Goodra, but the Extreme Speed is just barely able to not take out Pyroar, and Pyroar gets off the Terra Blast crit, not necessary, just pretty safe Arcanine finish off there. So yeah, that was the Kalos team, and while I don't think there's anything that this team specifically excels against, I feel like you can get a lot of good and neutral damage into your opponent in order to try and pressure them, and there are definitely some teams in the format right now that won't know how to really handle that neutral damage. Especially whenever you can make a 2-hit KO, a 1-hit KO with things like Acid Spray and Metal Sound on Klefki, you get a slight advantage over some people with that because it can catch them off guard. But that is going to be it for this video, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, and even consider subscribing, because both of those things would help me out an absolute ton, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.